Hi everyone, I'm Drew Parsons, and in this video we're going to take an orchestral mock-up that was created in Pro Tools and import it into Sibelius to create a final score. So orchestral mock-ups can be created in several different ways. You could compose the whole thing in Sibelius, or have an idea that starts in Sibelius, and you've brought it into Pro Tools because you want to use your sound libraries from, say, Spitfire Audio or Native Instruments. Or if you like, you can compose the whole thing in Pro Tools using those sound libraries. Whichever way you work, in the end, we'll always import it into Sibelius so that we can create that final score to give to musicians to perform. So if you are one of those composers that uses your DAW for all of your orchestral mockups, and you want to know how easy it is to use Sibelius to create great looking scores, this is the video for you. So let's open up Pro Tools and get started. So here we are in my Pro Tools session, and as you can see, I have a number of folder tracks for each group of instruments that are inside of my mockup. An orchestral mockup can have anything from 2 to 200 different instrument tracks, so having these folder tracks here really does help me keep things organized. So if I open up each folder track, you can see exactly what instruments I have in my mockup. So in my woodwinds, I have some flutes, oboes, clarinets, and bassoons. If we click the brass folder track, you can see that I have some horns, some trumpets, and trombones. In the percussion, we have some timpanis, and in strings, we have violins, violas, cellos, and double bass. So there's about 15 different instruments in this mock-up. So let's just have a little bit of a listen to see how it sounds. So not a bad sounding piece. So what we need to do to get this out of Pro Tools is to export a MIDI file. So to do that, we're going to navigate to the File menu and select Export and Export MIDI. And here you see we have the option to export a multi-track MIDI file, and then we'll press OK. And then select somewhere on your computer to save that MIDI file. And then we'll move over to Sibelius and import that file. So we've just launched Sibelius, and the first window to appear is the Quick Start window. So for anyone that's never used Sibelius before, this is where we would begin to create our score. So you could start with a blank score, and this is great if you're only adding a few instruments and you know exactly what they are. You can create new instruments from this Add Remove Instruments window. And then you can also go and add a time signature and a key signature and any additional information that you want to add to your score before you start adding notes. But the one thing I like about Sibelius is all the templates that are pre-built into the software. And there's a search option on the top right hand corner here. So if you're working with, say, some strings, you can just type the word strings, and you can see that we have the option for a string quartet. And it adds all of the instruments that would be in a string quartet, and then I can quickly add my time signature and key signature to this. If you're, say, working in film music, you can actually just type the word film, and you can see that we have an orchestral score that has a house style for film music with the large time signatures and even time code on the score. So some really great templates are already built into Sibelius to kind of help you get started very, very quickly. I've already got a template that I've created, so I'm just going to launch that. And then we're going to go to File, Import, and import that MIDI file that we saved earlier. So as you can see, there are a lot of different options here for importing MIDI. We can import just one track from our MIDI track, or we can import everything. We have all of that flexibility here in this window. So you can see in this table here, I have on the left here all of my tracks from my MIDI track. And on the right here, I've got instruments, which refers to all the instruments that are in my template already. So I can manually go in and add flutes to the flute instrument track, or I could add the cellos to the cello track. And what's really great about this import option is that if you've got any articulations or techniques that you want to add, you can add them here at the import stage. So I can choose if I want it to be staccato, or if I want it to be pizzicato, I can actually add that all here as well. So that's really, really flexible. The one thing I also do like is this auto assign button. So when I click auto assign, it's going to analyze all of the tracks in my MIDI track, as well as all of the instruments in my score, and trying to match them up together. So you can see that it's analyzed all of that and tried to add some tracks. There's a few that didn't import, so we can manually do those. Okay, now that all of the instruments match the instruments in my stave, we can go ahead and import that. What is worth knowing, if you have a large orchestral template and there are instruments that are not going to be used in that template, you can choose hide empty staves, and that will actually hide all the staves that aren't going to be used in this mockup. So I'm going to hit import now. Okay, now that my MIDI mockup has been imported into Sibelius, let's take this opportunity to have a quick look around and see exactly what all of these tools are doing here at the top of our window. So this is what we call the ribbon. And the ribbon has all of the tools that we need for importing notes and symbols and cleaning up all of our score. So if we start from the Home tab, this is where we can add and change instruments or add bars. And then we have our note input mode. And this is for entering notes onto our score and even checking an input device. So if you're using a MIDI keyboard like I am, I can go in here and test that it's working. Great. Notations. So then once we've finished adding all of our notes onto our sheet music, we can then start adding things like different clefs or key signatures and crescendos and trills. These can all be found in the Notations tab. If you're looking for text, like expressions or techniques, or you want to add chords, you would find that in the Text tab. Once you've added all of your notations and all of your different symbols into your score, you probably want to hear it back. So under the Play tab is where we have all of those functions. So I can actually change my sound set from, say, Sibelius sounds to maybe jazz sounds or chamber sounds. I have a mixer option, so I can actually blend some of the instruments together and kind of get a bit of a balance. And then all of my transport functionality, so I can return to the start of the score and hit play. Then when we get to the stage of kind of making our score presentable, that's where we have our layout and appearance tab, where we can actually change our layout. We can go into appearance and maybe import a different house style to make it look a little bit cleaner, or maybe make it look like it's been handwritten. That can all be done in these tabs here. And then once we've kind of finished our score, we would then go into parts and create different parts for different musicians. So you don't need to copy and paste each instrument onto a new score. You can actually just hit parts and it will automatically create individual parts or individual sheet music for each player. So let's just look at my MIDI mockup, and just as you can see, all I've done is import it, and already it's looking really neat. This has everything to do with what's happening under the hood with Sibelius. So if we go to the Layout tab, you can see that I have Auto Optimize turned on. So Auto Optimize is a function that automatically expands and reduces the spacing between our staves to try and keep things neat all the time. So as I'm adding more notes, or I'm adding symbols and crescendo symbols and lines and lyrics, the score is going to be continually moving to kind of stay neat and not too messy all the time. So a really great example is if I select all of these notes and just drop them down a few octaves, you can see that the oboe is moving down. So that's how Auto Optimize works, and it's a great function to have turned on so that you're always going to have a neat score while you work. So just at a glance, I can see with this MIDI import, there are a few things that I will need to change. Just looking at my flutes and oboes here, I've got a few notes that are playing on a second voice, but the first few notes are only playing on the first voice. So I'm just going to select all of these staves here at the moment, and I'm going to go to the Home tab, and I can filter out just the bottom note of that selection. And then if I hit right click, I can then put all of these on voice 2, and now the stems are all going the right way. We'll do that down here on my brass as well. So go up to filter, there we go. That's looking a lot better already. Okay, now I want to add some dynamics and tempo markings and all the symbols that will tell the musicians how to play this piece. So at the top here, I've already got Cratchit equals 50. You can keep that there if you want, or you could obviously add tempo text instead. So I'm going to use the shortcut Command Option T, and you can see that my cursor is now blue. And if I click at the top of the score, I get a cursor there. And then if I right click here, I get the option to put Largo. There you go. And you can see that it's also added it down the bottom here. So now let's add some dynamics to our woodwind section. I'm going to start by selecting a note. And then I'm going to hit the shortcut Command E for expression. And you can see now I have a cursor flashing just below those notes. So keep holding down the Command key, or if you're in Windows, it would be the Control key. And I'm going to hit PP. And that's now added that expression there for me. So you could continue to do this for each individual stave, but that's going to be very time consuming. So Sibelius does have a very smart multi-edit function where if you select multiple staves and hit the shortcut Command E, you see now I have the cursor across all of my staves, and then I can type PP across all of them there. Okay, and if you don't know the shortcut, or you don't know what tempo what dynamic you want to add, you can obviously select multiple staves like this, and just remember the shortcut Command E, and you can also right click to get to all of your different symbols as well. We'll continue to do that because there's a couple of other symbols and shortcuts I want to show you. So if we select this bar, all these bars here, and go Command E, I'm going to go Command F, which is going to give me the forte symbol, but I also want to add a Z symbol, but I can't do Command Z because that obviously is going to be undo. So if I hold down Command Option Shift and Z, you can see it obviously gives me that symbol. So it's just a good one to remember. If I want to do a crescendo, I can just select all of these notes from here, hold down the Shift key, and then hit H for hairpin. You can see it's created that crescendo all the way to there, and then I'm going to select this bar here, Command E, Command FF, and then escape. So you can see how easy it is to do multiple staves at the one time and add all of the dynamics to them. I can do the same thing down here on my strings as well. I can select all of those, Command E and Command PPP. Very easy. So we can go ahead and then do that to the entire score. Okay, that's now complete. We've got dynamics across all of our score. So let's now look at adding some lines, like a slur line across our strings. So if I go down to our strings here, and I can select a note like this and hit S for slur. And by hitting the space bar, you can make it larger, and holding Shift space bar, you can make it smaller. So you can continue to do that across all of, selecting a group of notes and just hitting S, or I can select a whole bar like this, S, or just a few notes, So we can continue on and do this to all of our score very quickly. And there we go, we've added all the slurs to our string parts, and you can see it's looking really neat already. And now we want to add, say, a trill to these timpanis here. So a really easy way of adding cymbals, especially if you don't know where they are in the ribbon, is by selecting the note and hitting the comma key on your keyboard. And as you can see now, up in the top right-hand corner, we have a Find in the Ribbon search bar. So I can just type the word trill and hit enter. And you can see now above that note there, it's just added that trill symbol. So you can just really quickly just add what you need by just hitting comma and searching for it. So it's a very, very fast way of getting notes and symbols on your page by using that Find in the Ribbon function. So now that we've added all of our dynamics and expression to our score, it might be best for us to play it back and see how it sounds compared to the mock-up that we did in Pro Tools. So I'm just going to navigate to the Play tab and return to the start of my score and hit play. Okay, so it's sounding really good. You can hear all of those dynamics. So I'm just using the standard Sibelius sounds that comes with Sibelius, and you can change under the Play tab what sound set you're using. So while the Sibelius sound sets are great, I'm also using Spitfire and native instrument samples in Pro Tools. So you can see here that I have Contact running on all of my instrument channels in Pro Tools. So I want to have the same kind of sounds when I'm working in Sibelius. So how would we do that? Well, when we go back into Sibelius, you can see under the mixer, we have a little box for Playback Devices. If I click this, I can create a new playback device using Contact Player. So inside of the Playback Devices window, we're going to hit New. And we can label this sound set Contact. And look for Contact as an available device. So here it is here, and I'm going to select Activate. And remove the Sibelius player from this playback device. And hit Save, and Close. So now you'll see under Configuration that we actually have Contact as one of our playback libraries. So we're going to navigate to the mixer, and all of these blue channels represent the instruments in my score, and this green channel represents Contact. So this little cog at the bottom of the green channel, if I click that, it now opens up the Contact player. So any sound library that will run inside of Contact will be able to use as patches for our instruments in Sibelius. So let's start off by adding a few of those patches here. So I can go into my woodwinds and add the flutes, and also add the oboe, and add the clarinet, and all the other instruments that are going to be in my score. So I'll just go ahead and add a few more sounds. So I've added all of these patches to match all of the instruments that I'm playing in my score. So to assign all of these channels to Contact, what I'll need to do is in the mixer here, you can see I have the playback devices set to unallocated. So I'm just going to switch that to auto. And you can see it's now changed all of my channels to Contact. Now what we also need to check is that the slot number here matches the instrument over here. So you can see the flute is in slot 1. And if we have a look at slot 1, we'll open up the flute here, and you can see that it is playing on MIDI channel A1. So slot 1 and A1 obviously are linked together, and then we'll obviously check that the oboe is correct as well. So we'll open up that, and yep, that is A2, and that is slot 2. So I'll go through and check every single one of these to make sure that they're correct, to make sure we haven't got anything on the wrong slot, because what we'll have to do, say for example, we have here the timpani is on slot 11. So if I go to the timpani here and open that, you can see that it's actually on A10. So I'm going to change this to A11. So now that the timpani and the patch inside of Kontakt are actually linked together. And I'll go through and check that for all of the instruments in my score. Okay, now that I've checked that all off, let's play back our score and see how it sounds now running through Kontakt Player. And there you go, that sounds great, and it sounds exactly like it was in my DAW. So, as I mentioned, any sound library that will play inside of Kontakt Player, you can use as a sound library in Sibelius. So, we're now at that part of our score where everything is starting to look good. You know, we've heard it back, it sounds really great. So we can now go and change at the appearance of it, or, you know, any kind of, you know, change the house style if we want, by going into appearance and going import house style. And if I wanted to, say, change the overall look of this, I can just select that, and you can see now it's changed all the font and all the spacing. If this was going to be given to people working in film, we would probably want to change the time signatures in here. So we would go over to the engraving rules and go into time signatures, and you can see that we have time signatures film score. If we click that and hit OK, you can see that we get those big time signatures on our score. But if you didn't want to do that, we could just kind of keep it nice and neat as is, and we can then start creating parts to give to all of the musicians. So I'm going to go to the Parts tab, and I'm going to select New Part, and maybe let's just select the violin, and we're going to go OK. So you can see now that's created the violin part for me. I can go in here and change how this looks by clicking Part Appearance and Current Part, and I could go into Auto Breaks and say turn off multi-rest, so that I can actually see every single bar for the violin there. I can create other parts if I wanted to. I can just go New Part and go the flutes 1 and 2, Add Part. And again, I can go in and change the appearance of the flutes by turning off something like multi-rests. Okay, great. So now we've created all of our parts for all of our musicians. We can actually start printing all of those parts, maybe create a PDF, or if I have a printer attached, I can print all of those scores out. So that's how we take an orchestral mock-up that was made in Pro Tools and turned it into great looking sheet music with Sibelius. If you want to learn more, go to avid.com/Sibelius.